Hello, everybody. How you guys doing today? Pray you're doing well. I should do. And welcome to the Voice of the Mother. This is a book that is written by the persons, the two people that started the Voice of the Mother news line novels, whatever you want to call it. They are the one that started it. That book is written by them. I'm gonna read one of the stories called Adele. This book is called Heart of Fire. Anyway, one of the stories, the one I'm gonna read right now is called Adele. I made the honor that hope. So I'm only reading that part from the book because they are long. I'm only doing it because of a special occasion because we just finished the Bible in a year. That's why I'm reading it. They are usually long, so they're not gonna be short like the my others ones. All right, so bear with me. Now, Indonesia, 5 p.m. Monday, January 10, 2000. Under the shadow of swaying palm trees, Adele gathered the children together, about 50 of them. Her voice rose as she began to sing. Onward, Christian soldiers. She could see the fear in the children's eyes as they joined the song. I don't want to die, one of the children called out. He was not yet 10 years old. We're not going to die. Come, clap your hands with us. Adele leaned toward him, speaking directly into his ear to be heard above the children's voices. The scared boy reluctantly joined in. They sang another song again, clapping their trembling hands together. Adele was attempting to drown out the shouting, the screaming, and the terror, drifting up the hillside from less than a mile below. What? And why are you calling me for that? Why can't you just get it? Huh? She knew she had to keep the children from crying, especially the oldest ones. If one of them started wailing, there would be mass hysteria. Adela met the bravery. Even the other parents, who were clustered in a small group around the children, seemed to gain strength from the spirit youngsters. As the singing continued, Adele gazed over the assembly youth and spotted her young two children. Christina was already 9, and Cristiano 7. Adele could be brave. She assured herself she could be brave for her children. All the children, by the way, this book is very dark. Just so you know, that book is very dark. It's not gonna be all those light-hearted stories we've been reading. Justin was firmly rooted in Christ. She worried about them, though especially Cristiano, her little Anto. He was so young and small for his age. Adele silently prayed for God's protection and again was thankful she grabbed her Bible before fleeing her home. She opened it now, carefully turning the worn pages to a familiar passage and read aloud. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Philippians 4 verse 13. Then Adele flipped to the back of her Bible, where numerous songs were printed, and she led the children in another chorus. While they were singing, some of the children began complaining that they were hungry and thirsty. They had been on the hill since noon, and now the setting sun cast a vivid, towering glow over the sky. Sunset could be so spectacular here on the small Indonesian island of Dodi, but today the twilight was an ominous prelude to the darkness about to fall on the village. Suddenly, the shout of her husband, "Me too," pierced through the children singing, "Run, Adel, run!" Adele watched the edge of the hill struggle to see in the warming sunlight. She could barely make out the silhouette of men scrambling up the steep trail. Again, Mitu's voice rang out. "Take the children, Adele. Hurry! You must run into the jungle." Indeed, Adele froze, paralyzed by the crackling sound of fire now driving up the hillside as smoke ascended into the darkness sky. They had set the entire village ablaze. Every house would be consumed. She knew, including her own. She agonized over the choice she must take. Should she help me too, as he had his way up the working embankment, or should she run to the children? It was all happening too fast. In the same way a person's life can pass through her memory in an instant, Adele passed a future now, collided in her mind. Two wonderful children, a loving husband. Life has been good. She turned toward the children, then glanced one last time at Matthew. And in that instant, she remembered an uninvited, audacious 17 years old who had stubbornly seated himself on her mother's couch. Only God can separate you now. July 1989. Mom, you look like a monkey, Adel hissed, peeking out from the kitchen door toward the young man waiting in the living room. Her mother was not impressed. Adele might be too young to get married, but she could still show a little respect and appreciation for the young man's relentlessness, determinations. He arrived at their house at approximately the same time each day. Adele didn't know if she was more flattered or annoyed, as each day Matthew confidently settling himself on the couch and repeated the same request. Actually, Adele had answered him numerous times, but Matthew was either refusing to accept her answer or just pretending not to hear her. I don't want to get married. I'm too young. And even if I did wanted to get married, I don't want to marry you. Adele persists she was 17 too, and her beauty had recently blossomed, but she had no interest in starting a relationship, although she certainly had plenty of opportunities. Methu offered no argument nor took offense at her impetuous remark. He just sat here and patiently explained again to Adele that she was to be his wife. It is God's plan, even if you think I look like a monkey. Adele chuckled as she caught the hint of her mother's smile. Undeterred, Methu once more made his request. So will you marry me? She knew there was no logic in answering, so Adele just sat there, wondering when he would go away. Finally, Milo got up to leave, but before departing, he removed his outer shirt, folded it neatly, and placed it on her lap. There, he said, you won't answer me, so my shirt will wait in my absence. Adele couldn't help being flattered by this youth, yet sincere gesture. Maybe it wasn't so bad after all. 2 months later, Adele and Myrtle were married. It was a tradition wedding according to the local custom. It started early on a bright October afternoon and went long into the night. Two complete meals were served to the entire village that was out to witness the joyous event. It all seemed to go by in a flash as Adele fought off intermediate waves of anxiety, worrying again that she was too young and married was a terrible mistake. She was first among the seven siblings to marry. How could she possibly comprehend her new obligation as a wife? Only the word of the pastor after the ceremony brought the new bride comfort. Adele, he had told her, only God can separate you and Method now. Adele became pregnant a month after the wedding, and although she carried the baby full term, the child was stillborn after a long, intense labor. Adele and Method were devastated. But 5 months later, Adele was pregnant again. At the time, the baby was born 3 months early and wasn't expected to live. Friends who came to visit comforted Adele and encouraged her to be strong when the baby dies. My baby not going to die, Adele answered obstinately. Her heart was entirely convinced, and she refused to be swayed by the opinion of her family or neighbors. She would not lose another child. Adele gently lay her newborn daughter on a pillow and softly spoke to the tiny girl, praying to God at the same time. Why are you here, Christina? She whispered. You didn't wait your full time in my womb, but here you are. And even though you are small, me too, and I love you so much. And I know God's going to protect you. To the amazement of her family and the village, Christina developed into a healthy toddler and was joined 2.5 years later by her brother, Cristiano. That's nice.
This is the beach, me, the sun, and the rainbow, and the clouds, and the sun,
Yeah.
and the ocean, and some seals, and some sand.
You see? Sorry, guys. I don't make me something. I like it. People like it. And everyone know. Tell her if you guys like that thing.
The other side and the other side of
What other side?
the one side and the other side.
Mm.
I make a rainbow walk.
Hmm.
The walk is so pretty. Ow.
Okay, thanks. I like it.
Really?
Yes. Anyway, Adele and Matthew couldn't have been happier. Soon after Cristiano was born, they moved into their own home. It was a simple tree house made mostly from bamboo, and it had a dirt floor. It was humble, but it was theirs. Perhaps when their children were older, they could afford a better, larger house. That would be something to look forward to. For now, though, they were happy just to be out from under the roof of Mithil's parents. Nearly all the families of Adele village were Christian, and she enthusiastically assisted with the church youth program. There were more than 50 children close in age to Christina and Cristiano, and Adele loved to read them the same exciting Bible story her grandfather had once read to her. It seemed fitting that she was now doing the same work as her grandfather, preaching the gospel, even if it was to the neighborhood children. The impending jihad. Life passes with little trouble for Adele and those in her village until the neighborhood Muslim pays their first official visit. Although she wouldn't realize it at this time, the nightmare actually started at 3 p.m. on September 9, 1999, a day that, looking back, Adele will never forget. At the sound of nearby commotion, she hurried outside and immediately caught sight of the banner. Only two words were printed in large block letter: Sinti Damai, meaning love, peace. Clustered around the banner were 30 men, women, and children from a Muslim village named Dama, people of Dodi. A dark skinned, middle aged man proclaimed, "We are your neighbors, and we should commit to each other to live in peace." There was no sound system, but his booming voice flowed easily to the crowd. He stood tall and lean on the old wooden platform of the meeting house. There should be no misunderstanding or fighting between the Muslim and Christian villages, he said. They should all live in peace. Adele and others who had crowded around the platform, though, thought this was peculiar considering there hadn't been any previous confrontation, but they extended a hand of friendship for their visitors, who stayed the remaining of the afternoon. Later that evening, after Metu had returned from work in the local mine, Adele related the event. But what about the rumors? Metu questions. A strange piece of gossip had been circulating that the ninth day of the ninth month of 1999 would be a dark day for Christians on the island of Dodi. However, Metu and Adele had dismissed the rumor as just that. Now they consider the Muslim visit and agreed there seems to be no apparent threat. Actually, it had been a jovial atmosphere as the children played together. Nearly 4 months passes without an incident or cause for suspicion, and the Dowdy resident assumed the rumor was unfounded until just after Christmas, when Neil Pierce, a young merchant, returned to the village after a failed attempt to leave the island. Seeing him again so soon after he had left, the village asked him why he had returned so quickly. "They wouldn't let me leave," Yupo announced. Why not?" The woman asked as others pressed forward with increasing anxiety. Yupo continued. "A number of Muslim men stopped me. and I don't know why. At first, they simply told me not to travel right now, that it was too dangerous. I protested and I told them I needed to leave the island to get more supplies, but they didn't seem to care. They got really aggravated and seemed offended that I was a Christian. I recognized some of the men as one who were part of the group that visited us to proclaim the so-called peace. I didn't want any further trouble, so I turned around and come back home. Adele, Neto, and many others started to more of a European story, reflecting the event of the September 9. But with no evidence of immediate danger, there was little they could do. Then one January 10, the worst fear swept through the village like a rampart storm. Adele was resting with on Ellen Cristiano around noon when they were awakened by a sound of commotion among the neighbors. Adele ran out her front door and gasped at the sight of a large column of smoke rising in the distance. A nearby village, a Christian village, was burning. Then came the recent shout of panic. They must flee their home. 3,000 armed Muslims were on their way, and there were little hope of stopping the impending jihad, Arabic for holy war. I went back inside, yelling for Christina and Anto, but no one answered. The pounding in Adele's heart grew louder as she frantically searched for her children. Running back outside and screamed her name. Finally, someone told her they had been seen already making their way up the hill behind the village. Adele went back inside once more to hurry grab a few things. As she headed again for the door, she spotted her Bible on the table. She grabbed it and fled. Mom, are we going to die? 6 p.m. Monday, January 10, 2000. Metul and the other village men had held off the Muslim attackers for nearly 4 hours, but there were simply too many of them, and they were well armed with machetes, torches, and firearms. Now the entire village was ablaze, and the mob shouts for Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar, God is great, God is great, filled the air. Metu and the other men frantically fled up the slippery embankment, hoping the jihad warriors would be satisfied with the destruction of their village. Instead, a sadistic rage seemed to spread among them, and soon they were also scrambling up the hill, wildly firing their rifles in the direction of the assembled Christians. Nathan and Dale swept together their children and their own elderly mothers as everyone began fleeing in different directions, hoping to avoid a rampage gunfire. They threw themselves into the deep grass and proceeded to crawl as quickly as possible into the jungle. But the strenuous journey on their hands and knees proved more difficult as the heavy rain began to fall, turning the bare ground into a continuous pool of mud. After crawling for almost 2 hours through the dense jungle, they came to an abandoned shed on the edge of the coconut plantation, constructed of wood with three sides and a roof by farmers as a respite from the swelling after afternoon heat during the harvest. Hopefully, tonight it will serve as a sanctuary for the weary family. They were too exhausted to travel any further. Christina and Cristiano fell asleep almost immediately as Adele laid them down on a bamboo mat they found in the desert building. Like the rest of the family, the children were soaking wet and covered with mud, and while the deteriorating structures provided some shelter, the roof was full of gaping holes, hollowing steady trickle. Huh?
Mine too.
Ah, oh, okay.
Mine too.
Yeah. I'll take care of it in a minute, okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the rest of the family, the children were soaking wet, covered with mud, and while the deteriorating structure provided some shelter, the roof was full of gaping holes, hollowing steady trickles of rain to fall on them. Adele couldn't hold it any longer. Like the rain, the tears poured down her face and she wept aloud. When she had regained control, she and Meto huddled together for a brief and somber time of prayers. Then they quietly sat with each other mothers throughout the fearful night. As dawn broke, Christina and her brother woke, slowly coming to understand that the offering nightmare they thought they had dreamed was in fact reality. For some time they sat silently, staring at the adults. The wide eyes begged for a few words of comfort, but the deathly silence overshadowed the frightening family, and no one knew what to say. Finally, Christiana whimpered, "Mommy, I'm hungry." Adele's eye closed again as she tried to hold back the tears, but by the time she could bring her young son into her lap, she was weeping uncontrollably. "Please don't cry like that," Adele pleaded. "I'll go look for food." He tried to reassure his wife, but he knew she had reached her limit. Adele's heart was being ripped apart as she helplessly witnessed the suffering of her precious children. Metu was going back to the destroyed village to look for food. Adele begged him not to go, but she knew they had to do something. They couldn't remain in the shed without food or water. Time seemed to pass in slow motion. After Metu left, a deep sense of fear continued to grip Adele. Unable to fight the anxiety, she led her family back into the jungle. They eventually come They eventually come upon the others from the village who were hidden along the edge of cornfield. Adele led Christina and Anto into the mother's thought, the new row of corn, and they began picking and drying ears. At least they would have something to eat. A few hours later, Metul rejoined his family carrying 12 cans of Coca-Cola. It was all he could find. But as the children reached for the tabs to open the cans, gunshot rang out, echoing like rolling thunder toward the field. No one knew which direction the shots were coming from, so they threw themselves to the ground, having no clear thought of where to run. Finally, Christina looked up at them like, "Mom, are we going to die?" "Yes, we are," was the thought that ripped through Ada's mind. But she knew she had to be brave for her children. She put both of them together and told them everything would be okay. But Adele knew her word of comfort couldn't replace the dreadful reality of the situation. As the sound of gunfire continued, she knew what she had to do. It would be the most difficult conversation she would have ever had with her children. But Adele had no choice. She had to tell them, "Christina and Anto, please look at me and listen very carefully. If we are caught by those of the jihad, they will ask if you want to become a Muslim. If you say no, they may kill you." Adele looked directly into the children's eyes. She knew there was only one right answer, but how could children so young expect to be so brave? Both her children answered were simply, "We want to follow Jesus." Before the second thought, Adele opened the Bible she had brought with her and turned to the one passage that had continually running through her mind since she had fled her home. Adele's grandfather had read it to her so many times as a child, it was particularly etched into her heart. Psalm 23. She instructed her two children to repeat after her and began reciting the word, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Yea, though I walk through the valley of shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me." She continued until both of them had committed the psalm to memory. They appeared so brave, but Adele wondered if they truly comprehend the gravity of the situation. Feeling the tears forming again in the corner of her eyes, she hastily wiped them away with the back of her hand and asked, "Christina, aren't you afraid they may kill you if you say you are a Christian?" Christina brought her face close to her mother, looked straight into her eyes, and softly answered, "Mom, please don't worry. I'm not afraid to die." After the gunshot ceased, those in the cornfield eventually scattered. Adele, Mithur, and the family made their way back into the dense jungle, where they traveled wearing for another 2 days. They walked well into the darkness of night and slept only a few hours before rising again at dawn. At one point, Mithur had met others from their villages and learned from them that some Christian had already been killed, worried for his loved one. He just pushed them deeper into the jungle. Everyone was exhausted, and finally Methu and Adel realized they could not push the children any further. Although they had a small amount of fresh coconut milk, their hunger pain were growing worse, and Adel cried each time one of the children asked for food. They had also met with Methu's father and brother. They came to what Methu believed would be a safe place to rest, and they gathered some dry palm leaves for the children to sit on. Hearing the rippling sounds of stream below the ravine, he and his brother decided to venture down to see if they could find something to eat. At such a tender age, Unto didn't understand why they hadn't had any food in the last few days and bluntly asked if he could have some rice and fish. Your father will be right back, and maybe he will have some fish. Then we can eat, Aleb told him. I told him to offer some encouragement, but she knew it wasn't likely that Metu would find food for them, and she pulled Anto close, softly humming a chorus and gently rocking him. The all-powerful blood of Jesus. Less than 10 minutes has passed when she had heard Metu scream. At first, Aleb thought it was crazy to yell like that, knowing the jihad warrior could close by. Then she realized Metu had already been surrounded, and he was yelling for Adel and the rest of the family to flee. Again, she heard the word that had chilled her heart just a few days earlier. Run, Adele, run! Before Mito could cry out again, Adele heard the rapid crackle of an automatic weapon. She immediately pushed herself up, but with Anto's arms still wrapping around her neck, she stumbled. She turned just in time to catch a glimpse of Christina running in the direction of Anto's cries. Adele drew a breath to yell at her to stop, but it was too late. They were surrounded by men in long white robes. Anto was lying on the ground where Adele had dropped him. He tried to get up. One of the men swung his machete and cut him across the back with a broadside of the blade. Adele screamed at the top of her lungs and threw herself on her son to protect his small body from another blow. She could see her son's face turning white with fear as he slipped into shock. But her attempt to help Anto proved useless, as one of the Muslim men grabbed her long black hair, easily lifted her into the air. A bloodstained machete was pressed against Ada's neck as the men forced her toward a pair of bamboo trees. She knew their intention as they began tearing her clothing. She still clutching her Bible, but it fell to the ground as easily as her clothes. Ada closed her eyes, silently praying for her family and begging God to save her from being raped. Adele then heard the scream of her mother-in-law, and her precious uncle, and she knew they were being massacred by vicious dogs who had driven them from their home. It was too much to bear. On the edge of fainting, she fell to her knees as she saw those who had attacked her family turn and come toward her, blood dripping from the edge of the machete onto his blood. Oh God, Ada cried. She didn't know how she could go on. One of the men took off his sweating turban and tied it around Ada's head. On it was written, Allah Akbar. With her last bit of strength, Ada shouted, the blood of Jesus is all powerful. She is a Christian, a pig, a stinking pig. Let's just whip her and get it over with. It was near. A larger number of enraged Muslims now surrounded Ada, discussing what to do with her. They were speaking in their local dialect, not realizing Ada could understand everything they were saying. Trying to conceal her tears, Ada quietly prayed in her heart, Lord, please help them realize what they are doing. It is so evil. Please make them understand. They cannot know what they are doing. It isn't humanly possible. As she continued to pray, from the commotion in front of her hush, soft voice whispered, Adele, is that you? She looked up to discover a man they had captured from her village. His name was Hans. Hans had also been stripped naked and was bleeding severely. Her heart fell deeply into despair. She was certain he would not survive the day. She asked him if he had seen Methil or Christina. He shook his head no. One of the men bundled up Adele's clothing, shoving it into her arm. She was not allowed to put it on. She looked down at her Bible, which has been torn to shreds. Captives were marched up a steep mountain trail, with machetes prodding the most vulnerable part of the beating bodies. As the trail narrowed, Adele looked down over the ridge, realizing how high she was and how easy it might to be jumped. She knew she would probably be killed if she jumped, but that was okay to help me. Right, get some water.
Okay, it's a one.
Yeah. Lord, please help me, she continued pleading. Resisting the temptation to jump, she finally covered the top of the mountain, where, well, all of the thousand jihad warriors were gathered. They were all different ages, some barely teenagers, but each was dressed exactly the same in a long white robe, with a tightly wound turban on his head. At gunpoint, one of the soldiers forced Adel and Hans to stand on behind the other. The soldier was middle-aged with broad shoulders. He laid his rifle by his side and slowly removing a long machete from his sheath. Adel looked around, realizing she and Hans were the only two Christians in a sea of white robes. She closed her eyes, believing, even hoping, it would finally be over. Within seconds, she felt the warm flow of blood running down her face and body. The blood of Jesus is all powerful, she screamed again and again. Hans was screaming too, and she could hear the angry voice of other men yelling and shouting in distance. She dared not to open her eyes, but she just kept them closed long enough. She thought she could open them on the other side in heaven, but after waiting for what seems like hours, she couldn't help but lift her eyelids in front of the mutilated body of Hans. One simple word. Adele was covered with blood, but couldn't tell if it was hers or Hans. She was in severe pain with the repeat blow of the Muslim man, but there didn't appear to be any open wounds in her body. Her voice was getting weaker now, but she managed to repeat the word. The blood of Jesus is all powerful. Somehow she knew God was protecting her. She should have died many times by now. Over 5 hours have passed since they had stripped her of her clothing and started beating her. She already knew until her mother, the two mothers and Hans were dead. She suspected the other were too, but she was still alive, and there had to be a reason why. Amid horrible assault, Adele somehow felt an amazing glimpse of hope. The band of jihad warrior gathered their weapon and told Adele it was time to leave. She would be their guide, they said. They shoved her to the front of the forming line, and she led them down a winding road on the opposite side of the mountain. Adele had no thought of where they were going. She simply walked in a state of semi-consciousness and tried to shake the sound of Hans' brutal execution and the sight of his mutilated body from her mind. Not satisfied with cutting him to pieces, the men had covered his body with leaves from the surrounding coconut tree, poured gasoline over the pile, and lit his cups on fire. When they reached the bottom of the mountain, Ada was no longer needed as a guide. The men pushed her into the direction of Dharma, the village, continually pulling her long hair, taunting her, and smacking her naked body with the side of the machete. At each attack, Ada continued to shout, "The blood of Jesus is all powerful. The blood of Jesus is all powerful." Sometimes one of the men would run from behind and swing the flat of his machete blade widely at the back of her head. She would fall to the ground like a rag doll and cup her head in the palm of her hand. It felt like 1,000 needles had been driven into her skull. But when she pulled her hand back, She was astonished to discover she was not bleeding. Like, how is that from God? I mean, if for some reason any Muslim or anybody is watching, please tell me, you think that's what God wants you to do? You think that's what God, the God, wants you to do? To all those people, to women, those are real life stories, not made up stories. Those are real life things. Don't you stop and think maybe you're worshiping the wrong deity? Just stop and think for a second. You think that's okay? Following the hatred within, Adel courage increases as she again realized God was miraculously sparing her life. But why she couldn't comprehend? Why was she still breathing after so many others had been cruel to murder? Even her captors had a confused look on their faces, and she wondered if they were also questioning how such a defenseless woman had been able to survive the repeated attack. They were even more infuriated that she kept calling out about the blood of Jesus. Finally, one of them stopped her, lit a handful of tobacco leaves on fire, and forced them into her mouth. Ada's eyes grew wide as she saw the burning leaf coming toward her. She tried to resist, but there was no way she could overpower his strong arm. Convinced she had finally quitted the infidel, the man smiled in satisfaction to the others, but after he removed his hand from Ada's mouth, she spat out the smoldering leaves and said confidently, "The blood of Jesus is all powerful." The seven simple words had been more and more that a hellish nightmare continued. The sun set, and the sun set, and the light from the nearly full moon lit the path as they continued on toward Dharma. Adele could see the lights from the homes and the silhouette of children running and playing. She envisioned her own village and sadly remembered how the children there had played in the evening, just like these children were doing. The group stopped, and Adele was ordered to put her clothes back on. Two young men, they couldn't have been older than 20, were left with pistols to guard Adele as the others proceeded into the village. Adele asked the two young men if they knew what had happened to her daughter. "Yeah, we've killed her," one of them scoffed. Adele sensed they were lying, but she could see the hatred in their eyes. She also felt the hatred rising within her, and she prayed to God to take it away. A little while later, Adele was taken into the village, where she was again subject to mockery and torture. The warriors were brutal, but she was strong. If it was her time to die, even at the hand of jihad soldiers, she was ready. Once more, Adele realized she was the only hostage in sight. She didn't dare imagine how many of others had been killed. At that moment, she didn't know which was worse, to be dead or to be held captive by these vicious madmen. In spite of the torment, she continued to proclaim loudly, "The blood of Jesus is all powerful." Each time, soldiers unleashed his terror on her frail body. At the jihad command post, Adele was stripped again. Three women led her into a back room where she was bathed in cold water in what stood metal tube. "Please let me wash myself," Adele pleaded, but they refused, and after Adele asked again, the woman beat her with a large wooden spoon. After she could bathe, after the cold bathe, she was given an old T-shirt and a pair of shorts that were full of holes. Her own clothing belonging to a filthy pig, the woman told her, and it would be burned. Where are the Christians hidden? 11 men were assigned to interrogate Adele, as another 30 or 40 miles around them. She recognized a number of the leaders as men who had come with the banner to the village on the September 9th, chatting, "Peace to the island of Dodi." The man who led the interrogation was the same one who had spoken to her confidently from the platform that day. Again, Adele could feel her hatred growing as she realized that the very people who had come to make a covenant of peace had come back to take her village, kill her friends and family, including her precious uncle. Now, as the family sat her on the wooden chair in the center of the room, she wondered what the definition of peace really meant. Where are the other Christian healing? The tall, lean man calmly asked. I cannot tell you, even if you kill me. I will not answer. I knew where many of them were probably hidden, and also she knew what would happen to them if she told them. But them, we just want to know where they are, but she want to go home. Alex started silently, refusing to answer the question. The interrogation went on for another 30 minutes, ending with Adel being slapped across the face. A plate of food was placed in front of her, but she refused to eat. Undeterred, two of the men pried her mouth open and began forcing the food in her, and Adel spat it out, even though she hadn't eaten anything in 2 days. One of Adele's refusal to eat or speak traveled quickly to Aldama, and many people gathered outside to come and think her crying out. Hand her over to us. We'll cut her into pieces and drive her into the ground. Hearing the angry voices, Adele was flooded with hope and fear at the same time. Finally, an elderly man, known as Sabu Saba, walked into the room. He didn't appear to be driven by the same rage that had possessed the others. Leaning down next to where Adele was seated, he asked if she could tell them where the other Christians were hiding. No, I can't, she answered. As fear ran out and the tears began to flow, Sabah got up and said to the commander, it is better if this child comes with me. If she stays here any longer, she will be killed. A group of men continued screaming and Adel threatened to kill her as she was escorted to Sabah's home. They promised to wait outside for the opportune moment when they could attack her, but Sabah told her, you will be safe here. You can sleep in my spare room. Walking into the sparsely furnished bedroom, Adele quickly closed the door behind her. Then she sat down on the bed, a touch mat, and let the tear fall as she thought of her beloved family. Do you think he can save you from this? The following day, a group of uniformed soldiers entered the village. They were immediately brought to Sabah's home to meet with Abel. They had the same question as the others: where are the other Christians hidden? Again, Hannah refused to answer. She was allowed to return to her room, but could hear the men's conversation through the tin wall. The determined soldiers had only one objective: to find the other Christian, and they had decided that Adele should go with them as a guide. Adele was horrified. She continued in her heart that she would die first. Later that afternoon, three of the village's wives brought Adele some food, but again she refused to eat. As the women began talking among themselves, Ada realized she had known them previously. They were from another village and were raised Christian. However, they had married Muslim men and had been pursued to convert. One of the wives, Umi, began maliciously criticizing Adel. It is your fault that your son and mother are dead, she scolded. You refuse to convert to Islam. But now you are experiencing it firsthand. You want to believe in Jesus? Do you think he can save you from this? Shut up, woman. Stop speaking like that. One of the other women commented. What do you think? Do you think Muhammad will save us? Aliyah could see the tenderness in the woman's eyes, and before she departed, Aliyah reached up and hugged her. The woman started crying and whispered in her ears, maybe one day I can return to Christ. Aliyah couldn't tell if she was making a statement or asking if it was possible. She looked at her sorrowful face and answered softly, if you really want to return to the Lord, He will make a way. As evening approached, the soldiers returned. It had been decided that all the Christians on the island had been rounded up, and that Adele would be the best person to help find them. Once they were gathered, they would all be burned, every one of them. None should be left alive. Adele knew there was nothing she could do to stop the evil plan. So she remained locked in her room and prayed for strength. If they could take her as guide, she knew her refusal to cooperate would mean certain death. Some men started cheering outside Sarah's home, and others crawled to the outside wall to peek through the crack so she could see what the commotion was. The warrior had caught another Christian family. The husband had been killed, and the wife and the two children were on their way to Dama. She heard them say the woman's name was Rose. Her heart sank as she turned to her mat. She knew the family well. One of the children was Anto's age and had played in their home also every day. Nearing midnight, Sabah returned to the room. His face was long. Adele, what are we to do? The military has demanded that you go with them. Adele was amazed that he had said we. Sabat almost seems to identify with her suffering. His kindness offered a little isolation of comfort in the surrounding hatred. But Adele knew she had no choice. Tell them they can shoot me right here, on the spot. I am not going with them. Why are you so afraid of them? Sabat asked. Because I know their plan. I overheard them talking, and I will have no part in helping them kill anyone, she answered. Sabah left her home, another sleepless night, and Adele had still refused to eat. In the pre-dawn hours, more reports came in, another family killed. More and more children captured, and a young girl found. Adele kept wondering if she would hear of Christina, if she had been one of the new captives. Adele thought if they had killed Christina, it might be better. It was an applause thought, but she dreaded what the vile soldiers would do to her sweet, innocent daughter. Yeah, it's okay to marry somebody that is 6 years old in the Islamic faith. Muhammad married Aisha when she was 6 and trying to do it with her, but because she was too young, she couldn't handle it. So he waited when she is 9 and forced her. Anyway, Christina, at 4 o'clock morning, Adele was crying out to God, why won't you let me die? The tears kept coming, one after the other, steadily rolling down her face as she repeated and played the question, why? Okay.
My foot. My foot.
Yeah. The unrelated threat continued outside her room. One man almost succeeded in stabbing her by pushing his machete to the outside wall into her room. Two of the wives who had visited Adele the previous day also returned, begging her to eat, but she refused. She remained in her room, managing to get a little sleep in the stillness of the morning. But the majority of the time, she huddled against the wall and wept. She continued to pray for Methu and her in-laws, but mostly she prayed for Christina. Then the news came. Adele, Adele, Sabah called as he rushes into her room. Some men are outside. They said they captured your daughter, Christina. It was a risk, a big risk, but Adele had to know. Could Christina really be alive? Or was it just cruel deception to lure her away from Sabah's home? There was only one way to find out. They traveled by boat to the village of Salub. 6 jihad soldiers, Adel, Sabah, who had Adel's request, had agreed to go alone, and a young captive named Maxi, another friend of Anto. Yes.
I know my brother wanna watch movies. But which fitness we could play something else?
What?
Let's play something else.
What do you want to play?
Happy.
Huh?
Happy.
What is that?
And then it's a happy dollhouse when you watch.
You know what? Bobby Doll's house? Give me a second.
Okay?
Give me some time, alright? Another friend of Anto's. Marquis was only 7. Adele grabbed the young girl and hugged her tightly. She kept as she brushed masking her hair away from her face. It was a familiar face, a friend of the family. Adele sat next to Maxie, holding her and caressing her head on the short journey to Salobi. Maxie reminded Adele so much of Anto, but the peaceful moment quietly vanished as Adele saw the armed soldiers waiting on the shoreline. They yanked Adele out of the boat, and the brutal treatment still fresh in her memory returned. Maxie was terrified as she watched the vicious attack on Adele. She screamed loudly, and her body went into an uncontrollable convulsion. Hearing her young friends cry, Adele again proclaimed, God is all powerful. She now feared the trip of Salob had nothing to do with Christina. Hope was quickly fading as the beating continued. Sabah began yelling at the men, begging them to stop, managing to free Adele from their grasp. He held her into a large home just beyond the shoreline, where other captives were being held. Then he told her he had to leave. There is nothing more I can do for you. If I interfere anymore, they will kill me too. I'm sorry. There were other women in the house, trembling as the horrid chatting of the men outside continued. Adele had buried her face deep in her hands to weep, and she heard footsteps running toward her. Looking up, Adele saw her. It was Christina. Christina threw herself into her mother's arms and cried, Mommy, Mommy. They held each other tight, and Christina continued struggling to get her words out. I'm so sorry, Mommy. I'm so sorry. They killed Grandmama. And I saw his daddy, Mommy. I saw Uncle. They killed him too. Oh, Mommy. I know, Christina. I know. They killed her. The memory was still too much. And Adele began to cry uncomfortably. Christina didn't know what to say, so she just kissed her mother. Again and again, she kissed her mother, seeking an answer that would not come. On the evening of the sixth day of her captivity, Adele and 60 other captives were gathered together and told that they had converted to Islam the following morning. I will never become a Muslim, Adele responded. That's fine, you don't have to. But if you don't, if any one of you refuse, we will kill all of you. The commander concurred, and the blood will be on your head. A meeting was convened that evening among the Christian captives. It was the first time they had been allowed to meet as a group since the attack. They hugged one another and tears were shed. The Christians knew they had to decide what to do. Would they agree to convert, or would they join the rank of Christian martyrs? We can repeat the word. We can say the prayers. God knows our heart. He will not judge us. One man finally offered. How can we? We have resisted this long. Was it all in vain? What about our children? Are we willing to see them executed before our eyes? Does God want us all to die here in the Muslim village? The argument continued, seemingly fading into distance. Adele contemplated the situation for herself. She could easily refuse to convert. She knew her faith would carry her through the end. Is it? Is it? Oh man. It was fair for her action to determine. It wasn't fair for her action to determine the fate of others, including Christina. The dilemma plagued Adele as she cried out to God for answer. None came. The next morning, Christina were assembled in the country yard. Have you made a decision? Will you convert or will you die? The jihad warrior questioned. No one dared to be the first to answer. Even the younger children refused to speak. Frozen in a state of fear and in an inner struggle to remain true to their faith, the commander was growing increasingly agitated in the obstinate silence and barked orders to his subordinate in his native language. The soldier returned with dolls and spoon. In a bizarre ritual, they began mixing mud and forcing the Christian to eat it. The commander slapped Adele across the face, and she spat it out. Eat it now, he shouted at her. Adele refused. A hose was then brought out and each of the captives was sprayed in an Islamic baptism. As the Muslims began chanting verses from the Quran, when they finished, they danced like drunken men and fired a rifle into the air, celebrating the alleged victory of a converting Christian to Islam. The Christians standing silently together, looking to the confusion as the white soldier continues their futile celebration. But they are dropped on the spot soldiers carrying cans of gasoline toward the assembled group. A well dressed, distinguished looking officer walked ahead of the others, and they recognized him as the leader of the Island Java without an ounce of misgiving. He calmly ordered his officer to lock the Christian into one of the house and dose it with gasoline. Shoved inside a nearby hut, the terrorizing Christians began to scream as they hobbled around the small children. They were not afraid to die for Christ. Each of them had proven that again and again during their captivity. But the thought of being burned alive and watching the little children grow up in flame, it was too much to endure. In unison, they knelt down, crying out to God to save them from such a horrible death. As they were praying, an argument broke out among the soldiers outside. They were debating whether they should burn the Christians. One of them attended that the prisoners are now converted to Islam and could be useful to the jihad. Quickly it was agreed if the captives were willing to participate in the jihad, it would confirm their commitment to Allah and result in their being spared. The price of rebellion. Hearing the argument outside, Adel and the others remained in a state of shock. It was not the answer they were looking for, but a decision would have to be made. If the older captives agreed to go out with the soldiers in the next jihad, all would be spared, otherwise the gasoline would be poured in the hut, and the Christian would be burned. The trembling captives folded their knees once more, looking at one another for courage and wondering who would dare speak first. The commoners stormed into the hut, announcing their good news. If you are old enough to carry a machete, come join us in the jihad. It will be fun. The anger in Adel surged as she listened to the sickness mockery of the captive, feeling a rush of courage. She stood up, commanding, smile, thinking he had his first one or two. Instead, she addressed the other. Don't any of you go with them. If they are going to kill us, it is better for them to kill us there, here. At least we will be together. The commander, infuriated by her defiance, grabbed her by the arm. What did you say? Adel repeated. We will not be joining the jihad. Now, please get out. The commander squeezed Adel tightly. Joe, looking straight into her eyes, he didn't have to speak. His eyes communicated his fury perfectly. But Adele believed God spared them. She also believed her outraged rebellion would come with a price. As the commander quickly turned his back and left the room, the others, while admiring Adele's tenacity, wondered if she had just sealed all of their fate. Miraculously, the soldiers left too, and the captives were taken out of the hut. 2 weeks went by, and Adele was under constant threat. The Muslim knew she had influenced the other prisoner and thought she would be eliminated. Her physical strength was not coming back as she slowly began to eat at the insistence of Christina. Military leaders were traveling back and forth from the small village almost daily to discuss what would be done with the captive. The doubt of the Christian conversion to Islam was sincere, and the hunt as previously planned, keeping the village from any further defilement. As the last effort to confirm the conversation of further dilemma, the conversation of the hostage, they decided all the women should be circumcised. Oh, circumcised woman. I mean, I know how, but some of the women were horrified and began crying hysterically. The opposition confirmed the suspicions of the village commander, and again he insists to be executed. Others still thought the Christian would be useful if kept alive, so we agree among the Muslims that for now they will live. However, they took all the girls at which adolescents, including Christina, and cruelly cut them and cruelly cut them. The pain was excruciating, and Christina cried incessantly. And Dell anger fumed, and she again tried to control the familiar rage boiling inside her. Yes?
I know one has a brother.
Okay, then play by yourself. One ordeal was difficult beyond imagination, but watching her daughter suffering was extremely worse. Adele felt hatred for Saba. She knew hatred was the cancer of the soul and that forgiveness would be the only antidote. But forgiving seems far off and impossible. All she could do was pray. 6 weeks went by before another direct threat of execution, but Adele remained deeply troubled. She could see the way of the Muslim men look at her, and a group of them had already tried to rape her. She could sense their loss increasing as the days went on, and she wondered how long she could fend them off. Even the village commander had made inappropriate advances. She longed for Meto's comfort, wondering if he was even alive. Metu. Unexpectedly, one morning, a small conclave of government officials came by boat to Salubi. The officials were investigating an allegation that Christians were being held hostage in the village, a charge, a charge the Muslim soldiers vehemently denied. However, Nahum, the man who owned the boat, was a Christian and had heard that a woman named Adele was being held captive. After dropping off his passenger, he immediately set out looking for her. Are you Adele? Nahu quickly asked after someone pointed her out. Who are you? Adele responded suspiciously. She had barely gotten the word out when Nahu swept her into a hug and started weeping. I've heard all about you and your situation here, he said. What do you know of me? Mito told me, and I couldn't believe her ears. Mito was alive for the first time in more than 6 weeks. She felt a surge of joy and actually smiled. Mito's alive? She asked, making sure she hadn't heard him warn. Yes, of course he is. Would you like to write him a letter? No one asked. The thought of writing it too quickly went through Adel's mind. All she longed to make contact with him. But she knew there were more pressing matters. Yes, I would love to write to Metal, but I have something I must do first. Quickly, give me a pen and paper. Adele sat down and began furiously writing down the name of all the captives. She was still working on the lists when she saw the commander approaching. Quick, 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 take this with you, Naho, and please be careful. Adele gave Naho a quick hug and slipped away, regretting that she hadn't been able to write to Meto. How she longed to tell him everything, how much she loved and missed him. Oh, Christina was being so brave, but there just wasn't enough time, and she compelled to get out of the world or the captive. Unquestionably, the family will be worried too. Now she just hoped nobody had seen her talking with Naho. What were you writing? The commander was furious when he learned that Adele had not only spoke to the owner of the boat, but had also passed him a piece of paper. Did you send out a letter? No, I didn't write a letter, Adele answered. Whether you are down, her word came in angry, measuring tones as he held a knife to Adam's neck. Charlie Adam told him, I simply wrote down the name of those you are holding prisoner here. You did what? The commander was fuming. Adam thought for sure he was going to plunge the knife into her neck. But for the first time, she was not afraid. Charlie accomplished what she believed had to be done. And she knew Metu was alive. Today was a good day, and a day even the heartless commander couldn't win. I just assured the government official that no one was being held here against their will. I signed an agreement. Now he gave them a list of prisoners. You pig, you'll pay for this. The commander was true to his word. Ada was probably beaten after that afternoon and many afternoons to follow. In less than 2 months, the village of Salo began some under investigation, and their list has been circulated to the government offices and among the captured family, including Metu. What now Richard that Metu is coming with government officials to collect you and Christina. And there was ecstatic. She and her daughter had survived a nightmare that had been unleashed beyond imagination, and now they were going home. Her spirit was lit, and she even found herself smiling again. But Christina didn't seem convinced. Are we really going home? She asked skeptically. Will we get to leave with Daddy? What if they don't let us go? Adele cried in Christina's voice and knew Adele could hear the anxiety. That is too loud. in Christina's voice and knew her question was valid. She hugged her brave daughter and wondered what the captor might use to prevent her release. The next day she found out. I cannot go with you. Christina were made to stand in front of all the assembly captive. The commander addressing the Christina said, the commander addressing Christian said, we will soon take Christina and Adele over to Dama to meet with her Christian's husband. With great anticipation, the news Metu coming had already spread among the captive. They knew that she was allowed to go. She would not rest a moment until all the other captives were released too. Adele would be the lifeline to freedom. Then the commander continued with now a familiar threat. Adele and Christina will be asked if they want to remain here with you or live with me too. If either one of them choose, kill every one of you. As the commander walked away, he crouched down in front of a young girl, no more than 5. Removing his knife from his scalp, he pressed it against the trembling girl's throat and maliciously added, even you. The Christian stood and stared at Adele. How could she make such a decision? They wondered, and she also thought what they would do if they were in her shoes. Adele knew that no one would blame her, Christina, if they chose to go with me too. Yes. Huh? But before she could offer any kind of response, the commander said, let's go. Now Adele had no idea Metu was already waiting for them. Everything was happening so fast. She needed time to pray and to consider if the commandment was just a bluff. How could she possibly turn her back on Metu? Or how could she make her choice that might mean the death of the other captive? Before she knew it, she was being led into the room where Metu was seated alongside military officers. As they entered, the commander whispered in Adele's ear, remember, if either of you go back with him, I'll kill every prisoner. Not only them, I'll kill Metu too. I swear I'll kill him too. His icy words seemed chilly down the back of Adele's neck, driving out any thought that she might be bluffing. Adele could see the anguish in Metu's eyes. How he longed to be back with his wife and daughter. The last 2 months must have been seemed like a lifetime to him, but he was hopeful now. He also was determined. Nader knew already would commit in his heart that he wouldn't leave home without them. All she could do was pray for strength. He introduced himself as Mr. said and without hesitation asked, Adel, do you want to live with me too? Remaining in salute, Adele knew this was going to be the question, word for word. She had been instructed exactly what she was to answer. She tried to speak, but her lips moved soundly. Mr. said repeatedly the question on, Adele, do you want to go with me to the salon? Adele looked directly at me too, who was now wondering why she was taking so long. Me too. Tear rolled down from her face and she shook her word. I cannot go with you. Me too was ready to jump from his head to one to Adele and ask her why, said held her, said held her back, refusing to let him respond. Immediately said this the same question to Christina. Adele was still crying as she looked at the daughter and chose to answer. If she hadn't time to confess with Christian, and she was not convinced they would kill all the captives in Methu if either of them agreed to go back with Methu. But how could a 9-year-old daughter possibly grasp the severity of agreeing to go with her father? I cannot go with you, Daddy. I'm sorry, Christina sobbed desperately, trying to apologize to her father and explain the situation. Mr. said suddenly interrupted. There, we are finished. We will not have another word about the matter. Understand? Other Chris Adel and Christina were given 5 minutes with me to under strict supervision and instruction, not to whisper to one another. Ignoring the order, Adel spoke softly, praying they would not overhear. Metu, I had to answer this way. They're trying to kill Adel if we go with you. Please don't hate me. As long as I live, I will never give up hope. But I know one day we will be together again. Metu looked at his beautiful wife, seeing the pain in her eyes, courage. There was nothing left to say. He just looked at his family and replied, simply, I understand. Clinging to hope. As quickly as the meeting had started, it was over, and Adele and Christina were led from the room. Adele began to turn around to get a final look at Mithra, but the commander caught her first, jabbing his fist into her side. Don't you look back at him, he said. He's just a follower of Jesus. He is a pig. With her hope shattered, could, Adele could only wonder what the future now held. All she could do was cry. For the next few weeks, Adele clung to the hope of someday being reunited with Mithra. He held It helped ease the infinite pain of her captive and gave her something to hold to, even if it was a distant dream. Then, on April 10th, her dream turned into nightmare. Adele, the commander began, I have decided what to do with you. You have caused me to a lot of grief and obvious a troublemaker. I decided to let one of the men marry you. Perhaps he will be able to control you. Adele couldn't believe it. I cannot marry anyone. I'm already married to Method. I told you, Method is not a man. He is a pig, and I do not recognize his marriage to you. If you refuse to marry a man I choose for you, I will let them all have you. Yeah, this is actually in the Quran. You can marry, you can basically RAPA, a woman that is married, as long as she is a captive or a slave. I asked her no further argument, and Adele knew by the unyielding look on his face that was serious. There would be no escape. Adele went to the other women captive and begged them to help her. She knew there was little they could do but hope they would at least stand with her in the protest of forced marriage. But the other women signed, fearing for their own life. Finally, one of them told her, if you don't marry one of them, they may rape and kill us all. Ada was devastated. She had tried so hard to stand with this woman, and now she felt betrayed. She began to sob. How can you turn me into some kind of commodity and sell me off just to save yourself? The other could only apologize as they clung together and wept. They knew it would not be the last time one of them would be forced to marry. When she and Christina were forced to move in with Almi, her new husband, Adele believed the situation couldn't get any worse. The situation did get worse. A few months later, Adele became pregnant. Life. By October, Adele's emotion state had come crashing down. She felt as if she were uncontrollably spiraling downward to an endless pit. This woman had killed her son and mother, and they had beaten her mercilessly, more than she could count. Now she believed they had even taken her hope of being reunited with Metal. The hatred that had begun to her every day she was captured was growing faster in the new life inside her. She cried as she searched for hope, but found none. She couldn't even love the innocent baby in her womb. To Adele, it was just a reminder of all they had taken from her. I won't let them take any more, she decided. She waited until she was alone. Then she took a knife off the kitchen counter. It was hard to believe that had progressed this far. Adele questioned why she had been spared only to experience such despair. She knew God had saved her, but she no longer felt she could live. Slowly, putting the knife to her womb, she closed her eyes and prayed God would forgive her. Mom, stop, Christina yelled as she came running into the room and grabbed the knife from her mother's grasp. Into tears and crumbled to the floor. Christina was now crying alongside her mother. Mom, what are you doing? You can't do this to yourself. And this baby has done nothing wrong. It is innocent. Adele was broken. For hours she cried as Christina word echoed to her heart and soul. She begged God to forgive her, and she confessed her hatred for those who held her hostage. She began to realize all her rage had nearly destroyed an innocent life. She, as the jihad warrior, had done to her. It was sobering reality. Although she didn't feel immediately forgiveness for those who had hurt her, she knew she had to be willing to let God's grace work. Her hatred had blocked the healing power of God's love, and she now began to experience. Adele caressing her womb and speaking to the young life inside her. Believing it was a girl, she named the baby Sarah. Sarah, please forgive me. Please forgive the sin of your mother. You have done nothing wrong. That can come from such a bad situation. I love you. A dark cloud seemed lifted as she continued to pray and speak to Sarah. Previously, Adele had considered the unborn baby another enemy, child of her own son killer. Now she realized it was her baby and one of God's creation. An instant bound form as she hugged both of her daughters. The next day, Adele grabbed a sheet of paper. Knowing she had to communicate with Mitu, she had to tell him all that had happened and beg his forgiveness, even if he didn't consider his wife any longer. She understood, and she would not hold anything against him. She loved him, and as she wrote, her tears mixed with ink, making a mess of the letter. She wondered if he would even be able. The time she finished, she had written 6 pages for Adele. It was the most painful and important love letter she had ever written. She carefully folded it up and hid it away, praying for an opportunity to get it to me too. On December 24th, all the captives were forced to work on the coconut plantation. It was difficult work, especially for Adele, who was now 6 months pregnant. But the prisoner also realized it was the day before Christmas, and it saved her past holidays memory. That evening, when Adele started to follow home the tune of Silent Night, the others joined in. Soon, they all began singing the lyric, and the stern faced God listening suspiciously. Each of them knew the dangers in singing tradition Christmas song about Christ. They would probably be beaten, but no one seems to care. The joy of your singing will be worth the punishment. Later into the evening, the song reminisced about their families. The body remained captive, but their soul was set free as they continued to sing into the heavens. Next morning, they cried tears of sorrow and joy, mourning their imprisonment but looking for the happier time. They will never forget the Christmas they spent together in the field. On March 18th, Sarah was born. Now, the baby had come. Christina felt it was time to tell her mother, "You must try to escape. You, just you and Sarah. You must leave. If you don't leave, we will all die here." "I cannot leave you, Christina. I will never leave you." Adela assured her daughter. "Mom, listen to me. You have to leave." The tenacious 10 years old pleaded. "Amin will never let us all live together. But if you and Sarah go, you will think you will surely come back. But you can't. You must go to Daddy. He will come back for me. It is our only hope." Adele knew her daughter was right. She didn't know how she could possibly implement such an idea. She didn't know if Mitto would even take her back. And now there was Sarah. Well, simply didn't have the courage to plan her escape with so many questions still lingering. Then in April, her answer came. Adele had been carrying the letter to Mithu for over 6 months, hoping and praying for an opportunity to send it out. One afternoon, as some children were visiting the village, the occasion came and Ada knew one of the children and quietly made her way to where they were playing. She quickly passed the letters to one she knew had asked her to make sure to go to her husband Etu. The child simply took the letter and nodded in agreement. Ada walked back home, praying the letter would reach Metu, praying he would forgive her, praying he still loved her. And each day Adele peered across the village, anxious, waiting for the child to come back for a visit. A few days later, her wait was over. "Did you see Metu? Did you give him the letter?" She promptly questioned the child she had given the letter. "Yes, I did give it to Metu, and at the same time, I handed it to him. He handed me this." Adele was astonished when the girl handed her the letter. Metu had written to her before he had received the letter. She could tell by the discoloring frayed edge that he had carried it for a while. Besides, she had carried the letters she'd written to him. She considered reading it on the spot, but quickly changed her mind. What if Metu hated her? What if he had married another woman? And as emotion on a roller coaster as she went back to her home. Tearing, tearing open the letter, her heart skipped a bit as I fell on the word. "Ada, you could have 10 children by 10 men, and you will still be my wife. Don't you remember what the pastor told you? Only God can separate us now. I love you." Adele had answered her. She would plan her escape and rescue. Barely 2 months later, on June 18, Amin gave his permission for Adele to visit some relative on a neighboring island. Holding Sarah tightly, Adele wished for Christina as she proceeded to board the small freight, but Almond Almin pulled Christina back. She's staying here. Adele begged Almin to let Christina go, but he refused. I'm not going, fought Christina. She insists, but Almin wouldn't budge. He knew his wife would want if Christina went alone. But it was just as Christina had planned. She hugged her mother and whispered in her ears, "Please, Mom, please promise me. You and Sarah will go to Daddy. Please, I'm begging you. I'll be okay." Adele held Christina tighter, wondering how she could ever leave her alone. But Christina's plea seemed to cut deep directly into her heart. Wondering how her daughter could be so brave, Adele kisses her and said goodbye. She knew it might be the last time she saw her for a while, or maybe forever. Stood again, the boat welling, slowly watched Christina faded into the distance. She hugged Sarah and began to cry once more as she asked herself again if she was making the right decision. She had no intention of visiting her distant relative. She would quickly make her way to Methu before Almin realized she had escaped. Then somehow they had to get Christina back. It took Adele a week to reach the place where Methu was staying. The journey had been long and difficult, and Adele had avoided making contact with Methu up to this point. Fearing Armin would find out what she was up to, she sat on the bed, quietly holding Sarah in the back room of the guest room, anxiety waiting. What Methu really wanted me, she kept asking herself. And what about Sarah? Even though Adele was not free, she still felt captive. Worse, she felt like a traitor. She had married another man and left her daughter Christina behind. How could Mitu ever forgive her? Over and over, she questioned her decision and she cried herself to sleep. Adela woke up, the sound of Mitu entering the house. She sat up in the bed, trembling, and then she grabbed Sarah, who was still sleeping, and stood up silently, convinced she had made a terrible mistake. Ada gave to an urge to run from the house. She didn't think about where she would go. She would just run. She couldn't face Mitu. But before she could get to the door, Mitu walked in, without pausing, even in an instant. He crossed the room and swept up his wife a joyful embrace. Then she looked down at the baby girl, Adele, in her arms, and he smiled. "So this is our new daughter," he said. Adele cried happy tears now. Children in so long awaiting reunion. Adele wanted to hold her forever, to relish the security of his strong love around her until he had rescued Christina. Adele never waited day after day, not hearing a word from Metro or Christina. Had already killed Christina. What if Metro is dead? Is it all my fault? She cried to fight the organization question relentlessly pounding through her mind, by crying out to God for reassurance. Adele found comfort in similar passage of scripture. She had desperately misses their own head. 18 months of captive. She remembered how the jihad soldiers had hacked her Bible to pieces in the jungle. Adele turned again to Philippians 4:13, and as her habit, she read the word aloud. "I can do all things to Christ who strengthened me." She remembered the last time she had read those words. It was on the hill behind her village, the very day of the attack. A lifetime had passed since then, and she had traveled to hell and back. She knew her nightmare was far from over, and she couldn't stop thinking of Christina, wondering if she had betrayed her own daughter. Mito had been gone more than 2 weeks before Adele finally got word that he was with Christina, and she should come join them at once. They would finally be reunited, the family again. Tears of joy rolled down her face as she thanked God that Mito was able to rescue Christina. But now she wondered, how far will Almin go to get her back? Epilogue. When we interviewed Adele, she and Metu were studying in a secret Bible school, learning to be evangelists. Even though several months had passed since she escaped, Adele and her family continued to be constantly on the run. Lord Elman, who, with the help of many Muslims he had enlisted, continued to hunt them down. On at least 2 occasions, Adele was nearly captured. Adele had to deal with two significant issues upon her release. The first was something that initially she thought she could never do. As a Christian, she knew she had to forgive the jihad soldiers. The difficulty process had actually begun with her pregnancy. Christina remained told her that the baby growing inside her had done nothing wrong. That baby Sarah was innocent. Adel knew she could say the word I forgive. But they also need to penetrate her heart, where real forgiveness takes place. During the month following her escape, Ada spent much time in prayer. She prayed for salvation for those who had hurt her and the family. She believed this prayer was the key to being able to forgive them in the heart. The second issue was equally challenging. Adele had to forgive herself because of her forced marriage to Amin. She often thought of herself as a traitor. Fortunately, other Christians confirmed the self-accusation, and the idea continued plaguing her soul, bringing her much anxiety, especially during her escape. At the time, she believed that Metu and other Christians' friends would put her out because of her forced marriage. At times, this inner turmoil was more difficult to handle than the physical abuse she had endured. When Adele came out of captivity, she was debriefed by a Christian missionary couple who had, before they met too, and had worked both nationally and internationally to help her cause. When Adele approached her husband, the Lord spoke to his spirit, and the very first word that came out of his mouth, Adele, you're not a traitor. Hearing his word, Adele broke down and wept, and on that day she began to forgive herself. Adele and Metu have continued to work to secure the release of those who were held captive with her. He continued waiting on her heart that some of the individuals mentioned in these pages are still held captive today. She asks for our prayers. See, as you can see, this is a long. That's why I haven't been doing it like that. Next one gonna be Punema. That's gonna be a long time for now. Okay, let's think about this. Think about this. There's so much more I need our help.